Thank you. Thank you all very much for coming. I'm Jonathan Brent, Executive Director of the YIVO Institute, and it's a great pleasure to welcome you all this evening, this Sunday evening, which I know is not easy for a lot of people, especially with Columbus Day tomorrow. In any case, Shana Tova, Chag Sameach. It's wonderful to have everybody here, and it's particularly wonderful to have our Polish colleagues here and to welcome the creators of the reconstruction of this extraordinary synagogue, the story of which you will learn about this evening. So the title of tonight's presentation is The Making, the History, the Reconstructing of the Gwoździec Synagogue. And we have with us this evening Rick and Laura Brown and the filmmaker Kerry Walensky. This project of the Browns reconstruction of a 300-year-old synagogue for the core exhibition of the Museum of the History of Polish Jews in Warsaw is truly one of the most extraordinary efforts to not only resurrect what was the vivid and vibrant life of East European Jewry, but to reconnect us with that in a way that words cannot do. I was privileged to see an early stage of the installation in Warsaw a year ago, and I can say that anyone who is interested in truly understanding the depth and the power and the magnificence of this synagogue and the imagination of the people that went into creating something like this, you must go to Warsaw to see this. The pictures are wonderful, the film is wonderful, but the actual replica will take your breath away. It is part of the core exhibition at the Museum of the History of Polish Jews, which officially opens on October 28th. And we are truly delighted and privileged to share this project with you today. I want to thank the Polish Cultural Institute, our partner for this evening, specifically Sean Bai and Bartek Remisko, for their work on this program. YIVO and the Polish Cultural Institute are co-presenting another program this season, Towards Life, Reviving Jewish Life in Contemporary Poland, on November 20th, a discussion about the renaissance of Jewish life in Poland today and the needs of the Polish community. And I want to say a little something about that. I don't want to take a lot of time, but I do want to say something about the renaissance of Jewish Polish life, which I think is part of a much larger reimagining of what Jewish life was, not just in Poland or Lithuania or in Ukraine or in Russia or in America, but it is part of something that is going on today, which is the task of reconnecting all of these fragments and reintegrating them into a whole experience. This is, in fact, when you think about it, a new phase of Jewish life in the diaspora, to find ways of reconnecting, not just with one's own personal story, where your grandmother came from, where your grandfather came from, but with the story of the Jewish people as a whole. And in order to do that, we need projects like this. The Warsaw Museum of the History of Polish Jews is a symbol of that attempt, and I think a very successful one, at reconnecting not just an individual with your hometown or the street or the house that you lived in, but between you and this whole vast community and this history that spans about 1,000 years. And so as part of that, I want to just note another major effort of the YIVO Institute, which is, some of you perhaps have read about, the effort to digitize all of our pre-war documents and books, both here and in Vilnius, which was, of course, in 1925, Vilna, Poland, and now is Vilnius, Lithuania. That, too, is part of this effort at reconnection. And literally, there are some documents that we have here in our archive, the second half of which have been sitting in a bundle of disorganized materials in Vilnius for the last 70 years. And what we will be doing is reuniting these documents together into a single whole via the miracle of digitization. It's a fantastically important project. It is a huge project. It will take us about 7 years to do this. It is part and parcel of the same spirit that is impelling this museum, this reconstruction, and countless other efforts at not just reviving, but rediscovering and re-understanding and re-experiencing who we actually are. People who have seen this extraordinary reconstruction have said to me they could not imagine such a thing to have existed. How did it happen that the Jews of Poland could imagine such beauty and splendor as this synagogue represents? But they did. And that beauty and splendor is being given back to us through such efforts. It's an extraordinary project. It's bigger than any one of us. And I am delighted that you're all here to become part of it. And as part of it, I would welcome you all to become members of the YIVO Institute, to come to our exhibitions, to come to our programs, all of which is directed at this effort of trying to help us rediscover who we actually are as a people. When Philip Roth spoke here about 3 years ago, as a present, we sent him the YIVO Encyclopedia of East European Jewry. A week later, I called Philip up just to see how he was and thank him for coming. And he said, well, it's so interesting that you called me. I'm sitting here with your encyclopedia. I said, Philip, why? Why would you be doing that? Of all people, reading the Encyclopedia of Jewish Life of Eastern Europe. He said, well, I used to think I was born in Newark. Imagine, I used to think I was born in Newark. Of course, he was born in Newark, but what he was saying was that his spirit was born somewhere else. And he's finally beginning to understand what that was after this extraordinary career as a writer who has had only the most difficult and contentious relations with his Jewish identity and past. So in the spirit of this, I want to invite everyone to come to the October 21st opening at the Museum of the City of New York, to a reception of the YIVO Institute Museum, City of New York, and the Warsaw Museum of Polish Jews, of the history of Polish Jews, for the co-presentation of an extraordinary video installation called Letters to Afar. It's a week from this Tuesday at the Museum of the City of New York. Everyone is invited. Please do come. Letters to Afar is a video that has been created by the Hungarian video artist Peter Forgas, based on the home movies that are in our archive, that were taken by Jews who had come here in the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, and then went home to Poland. And they took video cameras, movie cameras with them. And they gave us those films. And so it's really quite an extraordinary representation of life in a way that you have never seen it before. in Poland. Letters to Afar will be on view from October 22nd to March 22nd at the Museum of the City of New York, and then it will go to San Francisco, where it will be on exhibit for many months. It is now a really great pleasure and to welcome the General Consul, the Consul General of Poland, Ewa Żomecka, who is both a dear and warm friend to the YIVO Institute and a real force for good in this world. Ewa.
Good evening. Dobry wieczór Państwu. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a real privilege to be here at YIVO Institute. And after such a wonderful introduction by Professor Brandt, who is going to Poland soon for the opening of the museum. And I hoped that some of you, I wish all of you, will be there. If not, that will be an opening online. So please turn online 28th at 8 o'clock evening, because that's the 6 hours differences. And the official opening will be exactly at 2 o'clock in Poland. Ladies and gentlemen, I have to share something with you that I worked for the museum at the beginning for the 5 years. And at the time when even I not really believed that such a museum will be open in Warsaw, Poland. And such a symbolic date is in this year, 2014. For us in Poland, that's the 25th anniversary of our freedom. Because that's the communist collapse. Suddenly, we were free, without censorship, to search for our own history, the history of our families, the history of our cities, the history of our streets, the history of Jews, the history of us, all of us. And so that journey was such a important for all of us, and we came here to the United States and invite some young and other people to join us. And there is one person who joined us in this effort. This is Irene Pletka. Irene, where are you? Irene is here. Irene was one of you who believed that this museum, this story, is important. And we need, all of us need this story. And she joined us. And thanks to her, the Gwoździec roof is there in Poland. And I'd like only say one more sentence, that the mission of the museum would describe the story how this roof was made, because that was the young people and the old people of different ages, different backgrounds, from Poland, from Israel, from the United States, and this is exactly the mission of the museum. We would like that the museum will unite people, and we would be against the stereotypes. We have to be together, and we need a good news, and the good news is that before the terrible thing that happened during the Holocaust, that before it was life, with such a great accomplishment of Jewish people in Poland. And this is the news that we have to share with the next generation. Dear friends, it's a wonderful, wonderful time here on Sunday when everybody during the weekend, summer, enjoying these 3 days free of work. But I think we all appreciate Director Brandt for organizing this event. Thank you very much. And next time in Warsaw, Poland. Thank you.
And now it's a great pleasure to invite Irene Pletka to say some words. I want to preface this by saying that Irene is on the board of directors of the YIVO Institute, and the day she came to our board, it was a new day for the YIVO Institute.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Eva, and thank you, Jonathan, and Hoshe Befreind. Now, I always start my remarks with that because YIVO is the home of Yiddish. So let me tell you a story. 2008, the Joint Distribution Committee, where I'm also on the board, asked me to go to Poland to see. They said, there's a rebirth of Jewish life in Poland. I said, listen, I was in Poland in the 70s, I was there when communism fell, and it's a graveyard. They said, no, this time it's different. So I went and I did my work, but when I announced that I was going, a French photographer I knew said to me, oh, you're going to Poland, you must know Barbara. And I said, Barbara who? He said, Barbara Kirschenblatt. She's a foodie like you. So I connected with Barbara, and we went to a regional food fair. We spent an entire day eating hundreds of varieties of Polish food. It was really super. And I said to her, what are you doing here? And she said, I'm the leader of a core design team for a new museum. I said, what? And she said, listen, come to my office and I'll show you what it is. She said, this is different. This is not a Holocaust museum. This is a museum where we honor those who died by remembering how they lived. And she showed me the mock-up for the museum, and she showed me this roof. And I said, wow, I've never seen anything like that. We're the people of the book. We're not the people of the image. She said, well, you know, there were about 200 synagogues like this, and nobody knows about it. And I said, well, it'll be fabulous when it's in the museum. She said, well, unfortunately, we're building the museum now, and we don't have the funding, so it isn't going to happen. So I said, well, I'll give you the money. And so I have to say that for me, it has been the greatest privilege, probably of my life, to be able to partake of the creation of this. I went to bang in the last pegs. I spent a week with a granddaughter painting. I painted a single flower, and she painted a piece of a pillar. Reclaiming our own heritage is something that will enrich us all. And so, without further ado, I will hand over to the wonderful educators who created this entire project, Rick and Laura Brown.
Okay, thank you very much. First, I want to thank Jonathan Brandt and Helena Gindi for inviting us from the YIVO Institute, but also Sean Bai from the Polish Cultural Institute to come speak with you today. This is a great privilege to be speaking to you about our project. But I also want to thank Eva Gwoździec Synagogue. Okay. I've been going to Poland for 12 years, and I'm still, you can see I'm still struggling. I say that respectfully. Thank you so much for being here. We also, we have to thank Irene Pletka. Every time we think about the project, we also think about Irene. Because, you know, we're an educational organization, and the opportunity to build this project was just the most amazing highlight of our lives. But we set out believing that someday maybe we'll have a chance to build one of these synagogues, but the day came true when Irene stepped up to the plate and made the thing possible. And it was at the 11th hour. We had been working on this project for many years. And so, you know, it's the kind of thing where one of our scholar friends said, this is an example of one of the accidents of history, where we came together sort of in this serendipitous situation. I'll explain to it a little bit more in the movie, or in the presentation. But Irene was the person who came up with a very short introduction about our organization and demonstrated her generosity, first of all, also her wisdom and her courage, because she was believing in our project, which was, for many people, seemed very far-fetched and maybe impossible. But she believed in it, and she made it happen. And so we've had this incredible collaboration. I mean, and this is what's made this project possible. So Irene, thank you so much for your generosity. Okay. Okay, so I'm Rick Brown. This is Laura Brown. There's so many.
Let him do the talking most of the time, so we can move fast.
There's so many things I want to tell you, and I'm going to try to say this 12-year project in a very short time. So I'm going to go probably pretty rapidly.
Yes.
Laura and I are trained sculptors. We both are sculptors. We've been navigating our way through life as makers. We work with our hands. We think with our hands. We believe making is like a language, and so we speak the language of making. And this is how we learn about the world. And so we've been collaborating since we were in college quite a number of years ago. We've been married for 43 years. What we did is, even back when we were in college, we had this idea that someday we might like to create our own, maybe art school or some think tank, some sort of way of making based on our own way of thinking. And but it wasn't until 2002, many years later, that we actually formed Handshouse Studio, which is a nonprofit educational organization. And what we do is we replicate large historic objects as educational projects and experiences. I'll read this. This is the last slide I'll read. The hand is the cutting edge of the mind. Civilization is not a collection of finished artifacts. It's the elaboration. It is the elaboration of process. In the end, the march of man is the refinement of the hand in action. This is written by Jacob Bernowski. He was Polish and Jewish. He wrote the book The Ascent of Man. And this is a book he wrote pretty much at the time we were going through college. And so he had this idea about how making is what pushes civilization forward. And we embraced this idea, and we embraced his book. I show you this. On the right, you'll see young Thor Heyerdahl. Many of you here probably read his book, also around the middle of the 20th century, Kon-Tiki. Young Thor Heyerdahl challenged what was the widely accepted belief that the inhabitants of this island in the Pacific Ocean had come from the West, which would have been some Eastern country. And Thor Heyerdahl said, as a student, said, why could they not have come from the East, which would be South America? And the archaeologists at that time said, that's preposterous. They didn't have the skills. They couldn't do it. Well, he wouldn't accept that. He went to Chile and some other countries along the coast, and he started to study how they had made early craft using the same tools, the same technology, the same methods, and he created Kon-Tiki. He set sail, and sure enough, he landed on this island. So in his thesis, he said, this is, in fact, possible, that they could have gotten there. Now, again, at that time, the archaeologists said, that's ridiculous. That's just an act of showmanship. He hasn't proved anything. But since that time, this idea of experimental archaeology has taken hold and become an acceptable practice in the field of archaeology. And this is what we do at Handshouse. We believe if you use the same tools, the same technology, the same methods that is used to make an original object, that often you can find things about that history and that culture you cannot find in any other way. This is the way we work at Handshouse. Okay, so since 2002, actually a few years before that even, we've had some fantastic projects that have come our way. This is one we did. PPS's Nova was trying to find a credible theory of how the Egyptians raised an obelisk. You know, the obelisks sometimes were over 100 feet tall and weighed 500 tons. Well, we had a theory. They liked it. We worked on this project for about a year, and it was successful. But one of the things that we always do at Handshouse is that we always find historic precedents. That is that we don't come up with our own 21st century theories about how this was done. We try to dig into the culture and find evidence of knowledge or information that already exists there, and we built our theory on that, and it was successful. Okay, so then shortly after that, in 2003, we built a functioning replica of David Bushnell's Revolutionary War submarine. Growing up, I never knew about this history, but this is American history. This is what some people believe to be the first true submersible. And this is a perfect project for us, again, as makers. You know, it has lots of traditional crafts. And again, a convention that we use at Handshouse, part of our pedagogy, is we always bring in the best scholars, the best educators, the best craftsmen, the best design professionals that we can, and students under the same roof. And then what we do is we have a workshop. In this case, it was a 12-day workshop. We built this. And at the end of the 12-day workshop, we took it down to the Duxbury Harbor outside in Massachusetts in the middle of January, dunked it in the water. It was successful. Then we took it down to the United States Naval Academy, and they did further research on this object. So that's the kind of way we work. So basically, in a Handshouse workshop, you'll have maybe 50 to 75 people who are all working at the same time under the same roof and generating these objects in a very short, very intense workshop. Okay. Sometimes the projects can be quite fun. This is one we did also with PBS's Nova. They did a show in 2008 called The Riddles of the Sphinx. And they called us up and they said they needed to have some kind of physical making aspect for their film. So we said, okay, why don't we carve the Sphinx nose? And so here we are carving a 65% scale American limestone replica of the Sphinx nose. Okay, keep going, Lauren. What we do at Handshouse also is we don't start with a subject. We always start with an object. And we will literally take, on the right you'll see this etching from building the Louvre in 1677. If you look on the upper right corner, all on the top of that building, you'll see these what's called human-powered cranes. But we'll take an image like that, put it up on the wall at Mass College of Art in Boston where we both teach, and we'll say, how would you like to sign up for a class where we're going to build this object? And students will stand in line to take the class. Okay? So then what we do is we start at the beginning. We say, what is this? What is it made of? What were the tools needed? And this begins an authentic beginning, and a line of inquiry that goes off in all these different directions. And after about a year of research and then actually building at full scale, what's happened is the students have learned about not only how to make it, but also about the social, political, economic forces that surrounded making the original object. What they've learned is they've learned about the history of France in 1750. If I had put a sign on the wall saying, how would you like to sign up for a class that's entitled The History of France in 1750, they wouldn't have shown up. But when I said, how'd you like to build this, they did that. So they went through this whole process from beginning to end to making the object. This is how we do our projects. Okay, when we were doing that crane project in 2002, a professor from New York University was working with us, and he said, came to Laura and I, and he said, do you know about a project in Poland? There's a member of the Ministry of Culture who's trying to get people from around the world interested in replicating a wooden synagogue built in the 17th century. And so we said, again, we're not Jewish, we're not Polish. He mentioned this to us, instantly said, this is going to be an amazing project. Yes, we want to be involved. And so we made a contact, and we went to a conference in Białystok in 2003. There were people from all over the world who came to that project, okay, or that conference. And unfortunately, after that, people went back to their countries, and the project vaporized. But for us, as soon as we saw this, we became hooked on this idea. We said, we're going to follow this. We think this has a tremendous potential. So that image you just saw was the Gwoździec Synagogue. The Gwoździec Synagogue was the subject of, or the object that they wanted to build, or suggesting building at that conference. But at that conference, this is where we were getting to learn about this history, because before that, we knew nothing about this. And so it was, basically, it's a log wall structure, timber frame roof, amazing architectural object that we had never seen before. And so we wanted to pursue this. One of the things that we learned at that time was that there had been over 200 of these synagogues built in the 17th, 18th century in Poland, and that all of them had been destroyed by around 1942 after the Nazi invasion. So there was nothing left. At Handshouse, we also are very attracted to the idea that possibly we might be able to contribute to bringing nearly lost history back into the consciousness and of the people, of everybody. So one of the things that we found out about or discovered was that between the two world wars, there was some professors from the Technical University of Warsaw and Warsaw University of Technology. Thank you, Laura. And what they did is that they were part of an effort to kind of retrieve and document the wooden cultural heritage of Poland, which is so rich. And but one of the things that they were focused on were the synagogues, because these things were now several hundred years old. They're wooden, they're susceptible to fire, but also at that time there was a rise of pogroms and also anti-Semitism in Poland, but also all over Europe. So they wanted to document these things because they thought it was vital to have the information to keep these things for posterity. Sure enough, and not too long after 1923, actually if you look at this drawing, these are drawings done by students. Plans, sections, elevations, and photography. This is what happened in 1923. This drawing's dated 1923 from that research. And we don't know exactly what happened after the invasion, but we do know that this thing was an archive, was somehow, somebody had the wherewithal to put this in some place in the hinterland and protect it, because it would have been destroyed too if the Nazis had found it. So what's really important is there was a young couple, Maria and Kazimierz Piechota, and they were students at the Warsaw University of Technology right at the time of the war, the outbreak of the war. And they didn't work on this project because it had happened earlier than their time there, but they knew about the project. So after the war, what they did, and which was an act of courage, because again, after the war under communism, it was the idea of studying or trying to retrieve Jewish history was complicated. It was difficult. But what they did is they spent a number of years, and by 1957, they had compiled a large amount of this information, this documentation, and wrote their first book called Wooden Synagogues. It was published in 1957, and then in 1958 it was translated into English, and really for the first time now this lost knowledge is being made known around the world. It didn't make a big splash, but there was access to it. Okay, Laura's suggesting I should speed up a little bit. Okay, so we were using this information for our project, and the first thing we did was we offered a class at our college called Technology and Culture. And our plan was, let's make a large-scale model of the Zabuda synagogue. And so we made it large so we could actually make it big enough to see the joinery, because maybe someday this could be used as a construction model for building an original. And then also we thought we would make it large to make it very impressive as an art object. And we started exhibiting it around the country because we thought maybe it can help us popularize this subject, attract some real scholarship to the subject, and also build a culture of people interested in replicating one of these synagogues, in hopes that one day we could really build one that would be accurate and authentic and with a real following. So it was really interesting, because this is the way the process works. You know, Laura and I are not really teachers. We are dedicated to learning. We try to create dynamic learning environments, and so that's what we're doing here. And so with students, what they're doing is they're making this thing. So you're looking at that photograph at the top. One of the students said, well, this photograph and the drawing doesn't give us enough information to know how that door jamb is working three-dimensionally. And so the students started writing down, listing things where they felt like they just didn't have enough information to replicate it authentically. So we said, okay, it's time to go to Poland. So what we did is we created our first travel program, and we took students to Poland, because what we knew was if we go to Poland, we won't see synagogues, they're all gone. But we can see other buildings that were built at the same time, in the same proximity, that might have similar details that could give us a real credible example of how this may have been. Sure enough, and I remember the day where the student comes to me and says, Rick, come see this. You got to see that this is the exact same detail we saw in the photograph of Zabudov. And so he goes inside and looks up and he sees that, in fact, it is a very complicated, very complex designed detail. And he immediately draws it, photographs it, and preserves that. And this is where students now are going in and retrieving valuable history. We tell our students, just like those students back in 1923 who did that documentation, they were making history. If they hadn't done that, we would have lost this history. So those students did that good work, and now our students are continuing the good work of the students of 1923. Students are retrieving valuable cultural, historic information. So, then after we built that model, we did exactly that. We put the model on the road. We started showing it at different Polish centers, Jewish community centers, at different colleges, so again, trying to popularize the subject, bringing in some scholars who could speak about the subject with more authority than we could. And then we were continuing our research. The next thing we began to focus on was Gwoździec Synagogue. Now this is in another region of Poland. This is the southern part of Poland, in what is now Ukraine. And but with the Gwoździec, what was really appealing to us was that it has some the best, most thorough documentation of all the synagogues we had seen. It's also important because it's a transitional synagogue. They were doing some things there that were very advancing the architectural features forward. And so there was an anthropologist named Briere who went to Gwoździec, and he did some fantastic documentation. You can see here, for example, I'm going to try to use this. And the exterior of these buildings is a combination of Polish vernacular, Jewish vernacular architecture. This would be very recognizable all throughout Poland. But this multi-tiered roof is becoming something identified by the synagogues. And so you see this exterior, and you know you're in Poland, okay? But then you walk inside, and you would always enter from the west wall. And when you get into the prayer hall right here, you look across, and the first thing you see is the bima. You know, the bima is this elaborately carved, raised platform. And the Torah scrolls would be kept on the east wall, the most sacred wall, in what's known as the Ark, and the scrolls would be taken and read from the bima. Okay, and then in Gwoździec, what they did, before this time, most of the synagogues had barrel-vaulted ceilings. But with Gwoździec, they decided to change that, and what they did was they made this...
Oops, I'm sorry.
We're going against each other here. Okay, so what they did was they actually cut out the structure, and they built this, again, kind of multi-curved, multi-tiered, and reverse-curved, sort of elaborate Italian Baroque vaulting. And this is all made in wooden planks, and then painted. Every square inch of this interior of this synagogue, from the floor all the way up to the top of the wall, the cove, all this space, this entire interior is polychromed. Okay, so and in Briere's research, they documented photographically almost every area of the ceiling. So we were able to use these photographs, like you see here, for a reference to replicate the painting. Now, it's a little difficult to see this, but you're looking up into the cupola, up into that upper peak here. But you can see every square inch is covered like an oriental carpet. And there's floral designs, there's animals, many animals depicted, both mythic and real. There's zodiac signs, there are arabesque, there are Hebrew text. Every square inch is covered. Okay, so this is where we were going to retrieve our information from to do this painting. Black and white photographs from Briere's research in 1913. Now one of our biggest challenges was going to be color, because all the synagogues were gone, and there was very little evidence of the color, this became, again, one of our difficulties to overcome. But thank goodness, Briere, also in 1913, he was in the synagogue. What he did was, he took one section, it's kind of, we call the dome, the north dome, and he laid it out flat, and he replicated the images, and then he added color. So this is like our Rosetta Stone. This is the best evidence we have of color in these synagogues. But now you know and I know, if you take a photograph of an image, a color image, and you reproduce it and print it a few times, the color is not accurate. It's losing its original color. But we do know this. If it's red, it's going to be red. If it's blue, it's going to be blue. If it's yellow, it's going to be yellow. So we had the basis for the color. Then we knew, to be more accurate, we're going to have to go back to Poland. So we took students back on some more trips, field trips, to do field work. And what they're doing now is they're going into churches. In this case, is the Catholic churches that were right in the same proximity of the synagogues, and they were built at the same time period. So we started to look at their colors and also understand that paint style and techniques, and also the pigments that they were using. So we could get closer and closer to be using what we believed that they were using in the synagogues. Okay, so that was color was an ongoing problem, our project, a big part of our project. And this just shows you at Handshouse, this is actually our Handshouse Studio where we offer a lot of our classes. These are students who have come down from Mass College of Art mostly, and what they're doing is they're going through the process of looking at those images, trying to learn systematic ways to reproduce the images and the color, and develop a whole strategy for replicating this entire ceiling painting. You know, we offer this one class that we call the Lost Historic Wall Painting class. I told my students we're going to finish the whole ceiling in one semester. That's because of my over-optimism. And halfway through the semester, we hadn't put a single brush on the boards. And so it took us a whole year to do this one section, the one north section.
Half scale.
At half scale. And, but in that time, we were developing many techniques to be able to be consistent, systematic, and reproduce this image and understand it. Over that 6-year period, we had a number of workshops, including a couple at Oberlin College in Ohio, and we had some great partners there, students and faculty, and we, by 2009, we had replicated the entire interior, or the upper ceiling at half scale. Okay, so also during those years, we decided to replicate the bima. This is the bima from Gwoździec. And this is, again, a fantastic photograph for us to see this amount of information. Some scholars believe this is the oldest documented bima known. And so we decided we were going to offer a class at Mass College of Art, and we would replicate one section full scale to understand how this thing went together. So this is a group of students at the end of the semester, and we were pretty excited about what we had done once we assembled this thing. So I asked them, I said, how many people would like to come back this summer and to replicate the whole thing full scale? Just volunteer and come. Everybody raised their hands. And this is the way the Handshouse workshops, most of these projects were completed where students get so excited about it, they just come and just do the work just because they want to make a contribution to this history. So in an 8-day workshop, we practically finished the whole bima. And then shortly after that, we completed it. And this is the first comprehensive exhibition, because we had many exhibitions, but this is the first comprehensive exhibition at Oberlin College in 2009. And so at this time, we had completed the bima, the half-scale painting of the entire ceiling. Next slide. We already had done the Zabudov model. We also built the Gwoździec model. We also had built a full-scale replica of the Zabudov front door, and had a large amount of historic panels to go with the exhibition. Okay, so ironically,
After all of that.
at that time, what we found out was that there was this group of people in Poland that had come up with this idea that they were going to build a museum to the history of Polish Jews. This is that 1,000-year history of Jews in Poland. I'll have to tell you the story because we were coming to New York. Michael Berkowitz, architect in New York, was a colleague of John Rubin Productions as a film company in Boston. And John wanted to introduce us to Michael because he thought he might help us work on the film projects that John Rubin's and Trillium Studios had been working with us for a number of years. Well, about the day before we were going to come to New York, Michael Berkowitz calls John Rubin and says, "Do you mind if I bring a friend to this meeting?" And he said, no problem. So it turns out this is Barbara Kirschenblatt Gimblett. And we met in a little cafe, and we had our computer, and we sat down, and she says, "Show me what you got." So I started doing like I'm doing now, just blah-blahing.
Got about 10 minutes.
For about 10 minutes, and she goes, "Stop." She says, "Stop right there." She says, I want you to know, I understand exactly what you're doing. She says, we're in the process of building a new museum in Poland. And she said the mission of this museum is to look at the Jewish culture, the Jewish people, the creative culture of Jews in Poland before Holocaust. And she says, your organization has been doing this for the last 6 years. She says, I want you to go to Poland and meet our design team and talk to them about this project. And so at that little serendipitous meeting, we ended up going to Warsaw. And then they were very excited about the way Handshouse generates objects, historic objects. So they asked us to make a proposal. And they already had planned on having a fragment of a synagogue in the museum. And so what we proposed is that we would build a full-scale replica of the roof structure and the panels. And it would be placed in between 2 floors. So when you enter the museum, you see the Polish, Jewish architectural element popping through the floor. And then you go downstairs, and you would walk underneath and see the very Jewish interior. And this is a Photoshop rendering we did using the images that we had created in that 6-year period. And the idea we presented was, next slide, we would go to Poland. So just look at this real carefully. So this is Poland, and just quickly, Germany, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Ukraine, Belarus, Lithuania, Russia, the Baltic Sea. And what we presented was, here's Warsaw. This is where the museum would be. We presented that what we would do is build the whole project in Poland, and we would bring groups of students, just sort of in droves. It turned out 13 travel programs came through with students and faculty, but we proposed that the first phase of that would be we would work in this little town, Sonic, in the southeastern part, and at that time, in a 6-week period, we would replicate the entire wooden structure. And then we would do that in a scanson. You can go ahead. We would do that in a scanson, which is an ethnographic park. You can see it has authentic buildings, and which was a place that was interested in this kind of history and this kind of process of doing things authentically. So here we are. Now we've arrived, and this is one of our students. And what he's doing is he's converting a log into a dimensional timber. And you saw what he's using is an axe, just like they used in 1715. Here's a professional timber framer. We had 30 professional timber framers coming from all over the world, and these rotating groups of students. So you can see this is a professional, here's a student, both converting all these logs just like they did in 1713, same processes. You can see we're very, we try to be very authentic. This is an etching from shipbuilders at the same period. You can see this is not a contrivance. This gives us real cultural information. See how this carpenter's standing? Left foot forward, left arm forward. Look at the axe. This student's working exact same way. That's not willy-nilly. That is a skill that's passed down through guilds of trained technicians. that is identifiable to different cultures. If you go to England, they're going to do it differently than they're doing it in Poland and in Czech Republic and Germany. This is cultural information passed down through making. So here we are, replicating this object the same way they did, same tools, same methods in 1713. Once again, you see here, two people using the saw. Here we are doing the same thing again. One thing we did change, they used to call this a two-man saw. In the 21st century, we call it a two-person saw because we have women and men working. So with some conventions, we change. Okay, so here we are. This is what's called a pit saw in some countries, in Italy. We refer to it also as the goat, they say in Czech Republic. But it's a trestle, and you put the work on that trestle. One carpenter gets on top, one gets below. They use this frame saw, and then they use this to convert those hand-hewn timbers into planks. This device we built on site went from morning until night, the entire 6 weeks we were there in Poland. And here they are, just again, teams of workers replicating this object is the same way they did in 1713. Okay, this is our drawing. Just to show you, see this is a very complex roof structure. I could give a whole lecture on just the structure alone, but we don't have time for that. But so this complex structure, it's a roof structure that's holding up this huge roof and also suspending this complex Baroque paneled ceiling. And so you see through here the ceiling. Now we've been painting this, replicating this painting for 6 years, always in flat tables with panels. Now we know now we have to take those planks and put them into this complex curve, and we have to do what's called mapping. We have to put them in and mark them very, very carefully, and then take them back out to paint them. They have got to go back in exactly the same place because once that painting's done in all these different painting locations, all those painting images have to meet perfectly. So it's a very tedious process, but we're so excited now. We're finally getting to put these panels into that original complex curve system that they invented, its creative invention in 1713, 1715. Okay, this is also a very important photograph here. This was back to Bruyère's study. Bruyère had the wherewithal. He knew that there was important information up in the attic. So he went up in the attic above the vaulting and took this photograph. There's very few of these kind of photographs anywhere in Europe. And so what this is showing us, though, this is the cupola. This is the very top, we call the cupola. And the structure, we have a photograph of that structure. You know, many of you probably have been in a cathedral. And you walk in a cathedral and you look up and you see this amazing expanse of space and complex masonry vaulting. Above that, which you never get a chance to see, is a timber frame structure. Well, here, Bruyère photographed that, so this gives us information about these synagogues, this genre of synagogue. It's a very valuable piece of information. Okay, and I just want you to know that, look at this, also showing us they were using curved timbers to do this because they had that reverse curve shape. We did the same thing when we built ours. Students and timber framers went off in the forest, selected curved trees, cut them down, and did them just the same way they did originally. But I also want you to remember this image because, you know, here we are, we're in the attic looking at these panels, and just the other side of that is going to be soon this amazing painting. So, okay. This photograph is one of the groups. This is in Sonic, the end of the 6-week workshop. It's timber framers and students. And I want you to see this because you see there's a lot of smiling faces. On day one, when we came to that site, we introduced the project. They dumped off like 220 logs. That's just trees just trimmed. And the timber framers were scratching their heads saying, there is no way that we're going to be able to replicate this object by hand-hewing, no power tools, hand-hewing all those timbers into measurable timbers and build it into a complex synagogue roof with 30 timber framers and then groups of students who don't have any experience. And of course, Laura and I smiled too and said, "Oh, yes, we are." And what we said, we said, is that students are curious and they have a lot of energy and they are very interested and they're dedicated. And they will listen to you, and you show them how to do it, and you share your information, and they will perform for you. And so here they are at the end. I had many of them come to me and say, "This has changed my life. I can't believe this. This is the most amazing project." They said, "We probably have the most sophisticated hewing team anywhere in the world in 2012. And so they're so delighted. But also they're delighted because the next day, Irene Pletka is going to come visit us, and they were so proud of what they had done, and they were so grateful for her helping us out. And so she's going to come see the project for the first time, and she's also coming with Barbara Kirschenblatt-Gimblett, you know, her now partner in crime, and also Robert Subel from the museum. And so we were so excited that they're going to come and see the project. And I'm telling you, it was we had hot, dry, sunny days the whole summer, but on that day it was just miserable. It was cold and pouring down rain, but that did not stop Irene Pletka and Barbara Kirschenblatt-Gimblett. I think they got off the plane from New York with their sandals on, drove right up to the site, stepped out in a mud puddle, didn't flinch, went right over to the building, saw what we were doing, and I remember Irene was very excited. I remember she went into tears, which made me go into tears. There was tears of joy because she was excited to see that we had succeeded, at least that part of the phase. But also we had tears of joy because she gave us the opportunity to bring people from all over the world, including students from all over the U.S., from the West Coast to the East Coast, from the Great Lakes to Georgia, and also students from Poland to participate in this recovering this amazing history. So it was a shared, collaborative, cooperative energy to have the success. But again, here's the brain cells and the wisdom and courage that made it happen. What we did was we gave them each a peg, a wooden peg, because this thing's held together with pegs. And you could see them; they were very eager to be pounding these pegs because symbolically and literally they're using these pegs to hold this structure together. And then once we did that, we raised this one truss with a crane. We had planned to put all the trusses on that day, but we couldn't do it because the weather was so bad. But at least Irene got to see what the configuration and the scale of these would be. And so then after that, this thing is taken down and put in storage until we come back to install it in the museum. So then immediately, all the timber framers go home. Those 4 travel programs that rolled in and out, they went home. And then we started on the second phase of our project. We took the ceiling and broke it into 8 sections, and we proposed to the museum that we would go to 8 different cities throughout Poland to reproduce the painting. And the idea was, let's take these sections to different cities, and we actually organized the program so we could replicate the paintings in existing masonry synagogues. These were synagogues that had been in larger cities that had been bombed and burned during the war, but afterwards, because they were masonry, they had been restored, but because there was no Jewish congregation, they were used for archives, they were used for libraries, they were used for a number of civic sort of buildings, and often, in this case, an art gallery. And so, again, the idea was if we go to these different cities, this gives those cities an opportunity to participate, the city officials, the teachers, the schools, the children, all the civic groups that want to participate, and they could have some piece of restoring this history, which is exactly what we did. So here we are now in Rzeszów, the first one. We want to move a little quicker?
Yeah,
okay, we'll move a little quicker here. This is a group now of what we call our painting leaders and students, and from Poland and from the U.S., and we're going through all the stages of replicating this painting as authentically as possible. The paints that they used were distemper paints, that you're using rabbit skin glue, and they're using, at this time period, they were using like minerals, like clay bodies for color. Also, they were using a very world-known blue pigment called woad, where they would take the leaves of a flower and crush it and make this blue. It's a very tedious material to work with. With the rabbit skin glue, it has to be at a certain temperature. If it's too cold, it doesn't work. If it's too hot, it doesn't work. And so again, our groups are learning to manage all the sophistication of this technique. And then they're replicating this object as accurately as possible, and that they're going through all the stages. Rabbit skin glue goes on the boards and seals it. Rabbit skin glue mixed with chalk makes a gesso. Rabbit skin glue mixed with paints or pigments makes the paint colors. Then they're making these test boards. Everybody has to make a test board. They keep painting it over and over and over again until they get to a certain quality. Once they've reached what we believe is presentable, they go on the boards. Okay. Then what they do, just like in the circus comes to town, then they knock the whole studio down. That means all the sawhorses, all the paints, all the pigments, all our research material, everything goes into trucks. They drive to, the students get in, our painters get in a bus, they go to the next city, and they start the whole process again. So here we are, we went from Rzeszów to Krakow, and in Krakow we're working in the Temple Synagogue. So again, we're just moving around the country like this. And this is a photograph of the students, what they had completed at that time. You can see in this synagogue, it's an active synagogue. And so, we're wearing yarmulkes to be respectful. And we're working in the side aisles because they would have things going on, events all the time. And you can see just every day we're moving inch by inch, brushstroke by brushstroke forward. Then we go from Krakow to Wrocław over here on the western border, which is on the border of Germany. And we're working in this synagogue called White Stork. When Laura and I were on a Fulbright grant and looking for places to do this a few years before this, the White Stork was in very bad condition. And our thought was, wouldn't it be amazing if we came here and we worked in this synagogue, brought attention to this, and then people would come and maybe try to restore it. But fortunately, what happened was that in the time before we actually got there, there was the Bentu Kahan Foundation came in and they restored the building to this beautiful restoration. But then we started biting our fingernails saying, well, I wonder if they'll let us use it now since it's so pretty. But Bentu Kahan was so excited about our project, she said, yes, you have to come here. And so you can see what our studio looks like in the middle of this prayer hall. This is now a Jewish community center. But so here we are with all our systems set up and going through the replication process. Now, this is the end of the first summer. We've replicated the roof structure. We've had three-week painting workshops, and now we're going home, going back to school for 9 months, and then we're going to come back the next summer. Okay, so here we are. Now we come back. Now we're at Gdansk. First workshop here on the Baltic Sea, in a synagogue right here, and this is the congregation of people who had left, Jews who had left in the early part of the invasion of Poland, and now their families were coming back, and so they invited us to come be part of this their synagogue, which was fantastic because these are families now that had been from Gdansk, and then they spent most of their lives in Belgium and Denmark and Israel and America, and they're all coming back to unite their congregation. Okay, so then we go from there to Sene on the Lithuanian border, and now we're painting the coves here. We started the coves. We can move a little faster. And again, you can see how we're working. We're working not like 21st century individual trained artists. We're having to tell all these art students, this is not your painting, we're replicating a painting. You have to think and act like these painters did back in 1713. So they're really working like a medieval painting workshop. This is how this painting was done. Side by side, shoulder to shoulder, all using the same brushes, all replicating each flower exactly the same way, because there are over 1,000 flowers in this painting, and they have to be the same on one side and the other. They can't be just somebody's whim. They have to be accurate based on the history. So here we are. You can see in this one panel, 30-foot panel, there are hundreds of flowers. And this is one of the groups that came in, then they go out. Now the next one comes in, next one goes out. Here we are in Kazimierz Dolny. Now we're coming like the points of a clock. Now we're down at Kazimierz Dolny. Here's a wooden synagogue with a wooden roof. This was, the roof was burned during the war, but it was restored back to its original shape. And we're working inside this prayer hall. Next slide. And this is the original. So it's a wooden panel, and it's polychromed. They reproduced it without the painting, but it's almost the identical same size as Gwoździec. So we got a sense of how big it was to be in this synagogue. Next slide. Here we are now going around again, this Szczebrzeszyn, another synagogue that's very similar to the size of Gwoździec, and we're nearing the very end of our whole process. And now we are at the very last workshop. Our plan was originally to end up working in the museum in Warsaw, but because they weren't ready at the time, Bentu Kahan said, please come back to Wrocław. So we did our last workshop there. And here you can see what we're doing is we're painting the last two coves, because there's 4 of these. And we've completed the eastern dome, which is the most sacred wall. And then also now we're painting the cupola, which we save for last. That's the very tip top of this Italian Baroque vaulting. This is where we symbolically where the heaven meets the earth.
Right.
And okay.
You're at
Oh, okay. Okay. So
should I skip over to
oh, don't skip this. We have to tell the story. This is a great story.
All right.
Let me show you how a Handshouse workshop works. You know, students would come in to Handshouse. They're mass art students. And the first thing we ask them, we try to find out what their skills are, because we want to give them responsibilities based on what they already know, and they can build on that. So one of the first questions I always ask is, in these workshops, I say, is there anybody here who went to Hebrew school? Because we have some Jewish students, but not a lot of Jewish students in our school. And this young woman raised her hands, Ariel Rosenblum. She raised her hand and said, I did. I said, okay, Ariel, from now on, you're going to be the Hebrew text expert. And she said, well, wait a second. She said, I went to Hebrew school, but I didn't pay any attention. I was thinking about other stuff. I wasn't a very good student. And I said, Ariel, I'm not Jewish, and I didn't go to Hebrew school, and you did, so you're the expert. Well, anyway, so we knew when we started this project that the Hebrew text was going to be one of our biggest challenges. We wanted to be respectful of the Word of God. And so we want to be very careful about how we did that. And we thought it would be appropriate, possibly, to have a student who had this experience to take on this task. And that's exactly what Ariel did. I think she felt like, okay, I'm the expert. And so the first thing she decided to do was she was going to conquer the process of retrieving the image accurately. So she did board after board after board with brush, learning the brush stroke, the right brushes to make that technique so those letters were so elegant and so controlled. And so she conquered the calligraphy of the Hebrew text. But she wasn't satisfied with that. She wanted to understand the Hebrew. And she also wanted to know about it from that period. And so over the years, she became very informed and very skilled. That last image you saw, it was the last day or the last workshop where she's painting the 10 Commandments. Okay, but during the process, after the first summer, we had 3 painting sessions, and we told Barbara, we said, Barbara Kirsten Black, we said, now we're going to go back to Boston for the winter. Why don't we have an exhibition of the paintings we've already done in some significant place in Poland so you can the people can have a preview of what's going to happen in the museum? And so she said, okay, we'll do something. Well, what they did was they arranged us to have an exhibition that next summer in the Royal Palace in Warsaw. Now, this is probably the most significant, I'll stick my neck out, maybe the most significant building in all of Poland. We were so proud and so, for our students, and so honored to be able to show in the Royal Palace. So we worked with some designers, we set the exhibition up, everything was in place. And it's Thursday before the Monday that the show is supposed to open. It's all in place. And Barbara calls me. I remember that we were working in Szczebrzeszyn. Barbara called me and says, Rick, we have a problem. And I said, what's that, Barbara? And she said, because she often called me with problems, she said, Rabbi Shudrik, he's the rabbi of Poland, he said that exhibition is not going to open until I have reviewed every single bit of the Hebrew text. Now, we had been calling the museum saying, please find somebody who can, with some authority, can review our text. Well, they called 4 days before the show's opening. And so I said, Barbara, well, it's 5 hours away, but Laura and I will bring Ariel. We can get there. We will get in the car. We'll come tomorrow. And she said, Rick, tomorrow's Friday. The rabbi can't work on Friday on this project, or Saturday. She said the earliest he can be there is on Sunday evening, and the show's going to open on Monday. Okay. So we said, okay. I said, but let me get this clear. He's going to come at 6 o'clock on Sunday, tell us things we have to improve, and the show's going to open on Monday morning. And she said, yeah. I said, okay. So I just imagine us painting all night long. So on Sunday, Laura and I get Ariel and another painter and throw a bunch of paints and stuff in the car, drive 5 hours, and then at 6 o'clock, Rabbi Shudrick shows up. Now, he told me this later. He said, Rick, I want to tell you something. He said, when I got there at 6 o'clock, I'll tell you what I expected. I expected to be confronted by an arrogant young artist who's going to tell me what's right or wrong about Hebrew text. And he said, you know what? I found just the opposite. What I've met was this young, very informed, very respectful, very intelligent, and very charming young person. And what he said, for example, when they first met, he said, Ariel, I don't think, you see this little thing here? I keep seeing it all through that Spanish. He said, that's not right. This is not proper Hebrew text. And Ariel would say, Rabbi Shudrick, respectfully, she said that, you know, if you look at this photograph and you look at what we have here, I have replicated that as identically as I possibly can. She said, I'm looking at this. She said, I'm replicating what I see. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. She said, I'm replicating exactly what I see. And so she said, but in addition to that, what I've done is I've done some research. And she had been contacting rabbis and Hebrew scholars all over the world. And so she had some references that she showed him. And so it turned out we only had to do a few changes, okay? And so so we did that, and we had the exhibition, but we said, Rabbi Shudrick, would you please come to our final workshop in Wrocław and review all the text? And he agreed to do that. And here they are. These two they're like two little school children. They are so excited about what they're doing. They're working together, and you can see them comparing notes, talking about what they know, collaborating, and coming to an agreement on the text. And there was a point where Rabbi Shudrick turned to Ariel, and I was standing there, and he said, Ariel, he said, you should be a rabbi. And so I said, Rabbi Shudrick, would you mind saying that again on film? And so Kerry Walensky, our good buddy in Filmmakers, they got that on film. so it's documented. The important thing here for Laura and I is, I want to remind you, we're dedicated to the process of learning. And so this is all we could ever hope for as people dedicated to learning. I hate to say teacher, dedicated to learning. Here's a young person who walks into our realm, confesses that she doesn't know very much about this subject, but over about a 6 or 7 year period, she becomes, really an authority on the subject. What Rabbi Shudrick said is that, Ariel, you have studied this genre of Hebrew text, and I haven't. You know more about this than I do. He realized how informed she had become, and he concurred. And so for us, this is Ariel, the new transformed butterfly who popped out of the Handshouse workshop as an incredible expert on the subject. And I could have many stories like that about people who came on our project. Just quickly, this is at the Royal Palace, and this is our group that's there at the time. This is, and then also faculty. But I had to show you this person. This is Maria Puhutka. She's we believe that she's a national treasure of Poland. She's the architect, and her husband, the late Kazimierz, who were the two young architects who retrieved and made this compilation of information of the wooden synagogues. And we were so happy. We asked the museum to be sure that she's there and recognize her for her project and what she had done. And she told us, she was in tears, she told us, she said, when we first did our book, it wasn't really that well received. And she said, we did our second book, and she said, well, this is an attempt to just do it better. But she said, we never ever imagined that all these young people would be coming to Poland to try to recover this information and to reproduce it the way you have. So it was a very powerful moment for her, and believe me, it was a very powerful moment for us too, because, again, that was again one of those accidents in history where those two were so brave, so courageous to step forward at the right moment and to save this history maybe from being lost forever. Okay, this is Barbara Kirschenblatt Gimblett.
And okay, now we got to kind of run fast.
I got to go really fast. Okay, I'm going to go really fast now. You think that was fast? This is now putting now reassembling the entire timber frame in the museum and putting it into place. Basically, it's built on the floor and raised by chain falls. And then you can see here it's popping up through the floor into this glass box on the first floor. And then you go up to the box and you look inside and you can see that Polish Jewish structural form, and then see the vaulting from behind, which nobody would ever see in real life. But they get to see this kind of synergetic relationship, Polish, Jewish art and architecture coming together. You go underneath, and for us this is a very special moment because now we're getting for the first time to put these paintings into those curved shapes. And we're scared to death. We're biting our nails the whole time because we're afraid that maybe they won't meet back up properly. But board by board, we put them back together, and we were amazed at how lucky we were. But you're seeing we're working from below and above, board by board, every single board. We started at the top, and we worked from the bottom, and they worked toward the middle, and they came together just perfectly. So we were very happy about that. Then we're putting touch-up paint on some of these joinery where they came together, and also smudges from assembling it. We did that, and now for the first time we're seeing this. We've been working on this for over 10 years. We're seeing the whole thing assembled. And it was so overwhelming for us. I mean, even to this day, I can't think of the right words to say, but this is looking directly from the floor up into the top of the cupola. This is looking, if you came through the west door, which is how you would enter the synagogue, you would look across and you look up and you see what we call the East Dome, and how everything aligns. We were working for photographs that we never saw the whole thing at any one point. We had to construct it from fragments. But once we started studying those, we started to learn certain kinds of architectural relationships and adjacencies and kind of conventions that were significant in three-dimensionally. And so what we learned at every step along the way is that nothing in this painting was arbitrary. Everything was liturgically inspired or influenced. And it's a brilliant composition based on so much complex symbolism and prayer and imagery. And okay, so here we are. Yeah, now we're seeing the pretty much with a wide angle the entire ceiling. You won't go further?
I can't make it stop.
Oh, I see. Okay, so, and then we came back. Handshouse donated the bema in cooperation with Irene, and Irene once again stepped forward and she helped support a group of students and also our painting leaders to come back to. And herself and her granddaughter, who both have actually added some significant painting to the ceiling, or to the bema. And they came back for this last workshop. We painted the bema on location, and now we had completed the whole ceiling and the bema.
I wish it would stop wiggling.
Yeah. Okay.
And then actually, this is a.
This is actually a photograph. Well, actually, it's based on photographs.
70 photographs.
70 photographs that Kerry Walensky did in Poland of the painting, just little piece by piece, and then reconstructed with computers. So we have a very, very contemporary, accurate reproduction of that image. Okay.
It would not wiggle.
Okay, we wish it wouldn't wiggle. Okay, but
I don't know why it's doing that. But
so
something about that.
I just want to say this one last thing. Again, having the opportunity for us to go back into this history was just we just happened to be at the right place at the right time. But it's been such a significant journey the whole way. And all the way along, we're learning so much about this history, Jewish, Polish history, and sharing that and doing it collaboratively with all the people who participated. And over that 10-year period, there's around 600 people that participated in all those workshops. So, but again, when we saw this and finished, and to this day, I still don't know what to say about it. I feel so lucky, just lucky to have been there. But one of the things that I think we all agree is that we have done our best to bring back this incredible piece of Polish Jewish history. And so everybody in the world has a chance to now see this magnificent, heroic, creative period in Poland from the 17th and 18th century.
I would like to say one thing also about the learning component of this. We learned a lot getting to this point, but I think the real learning is just beginning. This is not the end of this project. This is just the beginning of it, and there's so much to know that we don't know, and there's so much to research that hadn't been done, and it's sitting there waiting for the rest of the world to come up and take on the unknowns. You know, why did they do it? What did they do? What does it mean? Why? It's the list of questions is endless. So this is just the beginning. So now you all have a job to go out and learn more. That's what we do.
Okay, you made two very important points. First of all, I don't think I've ever made this presentation and not mentioned Tom Hupke's book, Gwoździec Synagogue, that's what you're referring to. Somehow I just, as I got into my blah blah cycle, somehow he popped out. I actually thought about it when I was sitting there when his voice came on.
It's in the program.
Yeah, but Tom Hupke wrote Gwoździec Synagogue, which is the most complete compilation of information about any single synagogue. And he did that, it was published in, I think it actually was published in 2003. There's a really interesting story that goes along with that. Tom has been involved with our project the whole way through, so I thank you for catching me on that. The other was about the Gwoździec.
If it's possible to get this back on, I do have a map here.
Yeah, it's you know, it's a slide we pulled out because you can see how I talk too much anyway. And my editor pulled that slide out, which would show the greater Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, which I didn't show. I also want to make another thing. There's a person in this audience, Ali Kruvon, who I also didn't mention, who was a student at Oberlin College who participated in one of our winter workshops there because they were a carpenter. And then after that, she came to two of our workshops in Poland, and she's sitting there. I didn't mention her name either, so I want her to stand up so I can thank her, because she's one of the people that made this thing possible, too, by her good work. Oh, my gosh! Okay, now I need my glasses. You're going to have to help me. Tara. Amazing. So are there any more people out there who helped participate in this project? Another. You're going to have to tell me who you are. I'll see you. I can't see you. Excellent. Very good. Yes, sir. Yes, please give me applause. I want to see you guys afterwards.
Actually, I want to thank you for your comments, because one of the important things that I hope this project does is bring a lot of questions to the front. Not answers, always, but questions. So, you know, why Gwoździec? Or Gwoździec? Or you say that? And yes, this is where it is located, or in a very rough sense, okay? And the scale of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, when it was built and when it existed, and it still exists there today, but then, as you know, Ukraine, it became, the history of it is very complicated, and I'm not a historian, so I'll leave it to, I'm not going to go into it, but this is, was considered Poland, and this is why it was chosen. Why it was chosen is because it had the best documentation, it had the incredible interior paintings fully documented. documented. You're not going to find that anywhere else in existing archival information that we've located. It's amazing, stuff is coming out. New stuff is rising to the surface, so maybe there's information that isn't available to us at this moment. And it also had that transitional roof, but it's not in today Poland. So that is a confusing aspect. It also was not, it was destroyed in 1918, I believe, during the Russian invasion of the war at that time. And I welcome any other comments.
Yeah, I was in Poland in 2010 when the museum was being built, so I didn't see the reconstruction of the synagogue, and I hope to next year. But my question and comment has to do with Sanok. I did go to Sanok in the summer of 2010. Which was before you started, right? And they were starting to build a Rhein-Neckar square to show what the different buildings would have looked like around a square. I think there was going to be one Jewish merchant's house or building. I walked through the whole Skansen and saw the beautiful churches, Greek Orthodox, Catholic, that had been moved from other places to this outdoor museum. And just like the museum in Warsaw, it was a dream. It would be great to have a full-scale reconstruction of a wooden synagogue in the Skansen. So I'm just throwing that out.
Well, you're not the first, believe me. And actually, one of the rules of the Skansens is that buildings should be existing buildings that are moved there, like they.
Yeah, but not the square. They were right.
And the square, the Rheineck in Skansen, in the Sanok Skansen, is a real cutting-edge feature of the Skansen museum world in Poland, particularly. And they are broad-minded, open-minded, willing to go into new directions, and that's why we did our project there. And actually, there is discussion, certainly, and active discussion about making a full-scale a synagogue that would have been similar to ones in that region, in that town square.
Great.
So, and it's the director, Jerzy Ganalski, that allowed us to work in Sanok. He's an amazing man, and it will happen.
Yeah, and I just want to say that, many people who are Jewish or from the U.S. or whoever who go on their trips to Poland, not everyone, just many people I know exclusively go to see just Jewish monuments. And I spent several hours enjoying the local tradition of all the buildings that were there where there were no remaining Jewish structures. So.
I think this is the beginning again. It will happen.
This past summer, I was over in Warsaw, and I did get to see that wonderful synagogue. And anyone who can go to see it must see it. The colors are exquisite, and so is being in the room. But I've learned about how it was made and how you worked on it. And I wonder if there's going to be a book published on it at all, because there was nothing there to buy in the museum regarding this fantastic,
Yes.
recreation, because that was the whole thing.
The answer to that is yes, and it's being printed as we speak, funded again by Irene Pletka. And along with so yes, it will be there, and we hope you. We just read it.
I was in Lithuania many times. First time being around 2000, last time about 2010, and around 2000 there were 8 wooden synagogues left in Lithuania, and the last time I heard there were maybe 3 or 4, because they have been completely rotted, totally rotted away. But it was a fascinating experience, and I documented them and have some very interesting information. But there is still a few left in the world.
Yes. Yeah, actually, one of the comments on that is that the synagogues in Lithuania are later in general, and the ones that are featured that we actually focus on, that the Hutkas focused on, are the earlier synagogues, which have are actually the most significant in sense. Not that the ones in Lithuania are not significant. These are architecturally of this period, the 17th and 18th century, that we're referring to here.
Thanks for the talk. I'm wondering what's next for the project. You mentioned the painted walls and the floor, maybe the arc. I'm wondering if you're planning on working on those?
We started the west wall, the painting of the west wall. We started that this year. It has less. We're running out of. There's missing information, but we're doing the west. We actually have a half-scale replica of the west wall in our studio at the moment, and so it takes. We're moving that forward in that way. Also, we have been working with the Skansen and Sonic on discussing a full synagogue there.
Let me go back to your question. When before we met Barbara Kirschenblatt Gimlet and Irene Pletka, every time we would do an exhibition, like when we were at Oberlin College, the last thing we would always say is just imagine you could have a synagogue right here on your campus. And so every city we would go, we'd say, you know, why not? Let's build it right here at Vassar College. And I think we were just sort of sprinkling dust out there, hoping, magic dust, hoping somebody would say, let's build it in Poland, which is what happened. But we have a lot of ideas about possibilities for projects in many places, but one is brewing right now is to do a full-scale replica, ground up in Sonic is in discussion. And but we are continuing doing this half-scale replication of the walls of the Gwoździec as we speak.
Okay.
The microphone's traveling. I'll just let you know if you want to share any of this. The Browns have a wonderful website that shows the progress of the project, and also the film information is on polishsynagogue.com, and you can see the schedule of the screenings there as they develop in 2015.
If anybody is interested, we just made a print. We have copies here of this print. If anybody was interested in purchasing one, it'd be the first time we've ever had it available. It's a very unique historic image. There's nothing like this in the world. And so we have some if anybody's interested in purchasing one of those.
I think, like most of the audience here, I am overwhelmed by the quality and the quantity of the work involved. It's more than a 10-year homage, and I think the word recreation hardly begins to touch upon what you and many others have done. So I apologize if my question's a little narrow then, given the breadth of your work. I'm curious about the workshops you did in synagogues like that of Rzeszów, because those are masonry buildings, often newer than the 18th century buildings that you've been documenting the techniques of so assiduously. However, a number of those masonry synagogues did have a decorative tradition, though it's not as full-fledged, obviously, as in the wooden synagogues. And I'm interested in how, a little bit about how you chose those synagogues and what you knew about the decorative tradition within the masonry synagogues.
Excellent question. The idea of painting in the synagogues came from kind of another origin. We wanted to bring this project kind of throughout Poland. We wanted it to become something that brought this history, this culture, this interest, not just to Warsaw, but throughout the whole country of Poland. And actually it came out of a year or about 5 months that we traveled in Poland under a Fulbright grant to actually research, locate as much archival information as we could on wooden synagogues. And as we drove throughout Poland, we found these masonry synagogues. And many of them were in sad condition. Many of them were being used for all different purposes. And they were always in these very originally Jewish cities, or cities that had strong Jewish populations. There's the, kind of the more urban environments. Zamość, Szczecin, Krakow, of course, which is a big city, Kazimierz Dolny. Yeah, so we kind of did a survey. We also wanted synagogues that could hold our need for space. It's kind of like, okay, you need a big space. This is a practical thing I'm talking about here. Where are we going to do this? You need a big open space. Where is its significance to do it? And in a synagogue that's no longer a synagogue, that is reviving a synagogue that doesn't exist within a synagogue that's no longer a synagogue in a country that's missing this culture. It's kind of like this ratcheting up of the significance of this whole thing. I mean, we could have gone to a warehouse. We could have stayed in one city. It made it a lot easier, I'll tell you. Boy. We could have, just dug in and done it all in one fell swoop. But no, we hopped and hopped and hopped and wanted to bring the power of this recovery to the places that also needed another recovery. Now, whether the synagogue had significant painting wasn't really what we were looking at. We were looking at places that would be hospitable, that wanted us, that could accommodate us. It could accommodate us as far as food and housing and such like that. A lot of conditions we looked at. And we really went and we worked with the museum on this. We came to Poland twice, each time, locating face-to-face each of these cities and their congregations or their people that were running them, and sat down with them and said, this is what we want to do, would you like to work with us? And then we would work with them to work within the community to create projects around our project that could also energize Jewish culture within that community. Some were more powerful than others, and it was a lot of work, but it was really, really rewarding. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and it explains why Rzeszów and why not Rymanov.
Yes, exactly. You got it. If you know those two synagogues, you know why. One is, you can't feel out. I mean, you could.
Any other questions? Okay, please join me in thanking the Browns. As Rick said, there'll be posters outside for purchase, so please join us out there.